Hello, podcast lovers. This is your host with the most, JJ, and I gotta tell you, it's my birthday coming up, and I'm feeling a little nostalgic about a lot of stuff. So I'm gonna tell you about a horrible massage I had. Tucker and I are gonna talk about cover art, and also we're gonna talk about, is Tucker a serial killer? All of this and so much more on this episode of JJ Meets World. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called J.J. Meets World.
So JJ,
Yeah.
we had a really
That's my name.
We had a really sad day in the Lucas household yesterday.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What's going on?
My goldfish of 10 plus years, who had different names over the years, and most recently his name was Wendell, passed away yesterday. I had to actually euthanize him to get him the full way. Because
So he was very sick.
he was very sick. He wasn't eating. He was barely moving. He was just sitting on the bottom of the tank and basically breathing. And then if I'd put like a net or even just reach in to touch him, he would kind of move around a bit, but that'd be it. And he had basically he had what's called mouth rot, where they can get injured or get a bacterial infection or something, and if it doesn't heal up, it'll just get worse and worse and worse, and then it'll make it hard for them to eat. So he'd stopped eating, and he was 10 years old. He was about 14 inches long. He's a big fish.
That's a big fish.
Big fish. And so I kind of knew that this day was coming, and I've had to do that once before in the past year, because he kind of came up with another goldfish I had who was also giant, but I had to euthanize because he had a big tumor on his side, and he was having all sorts of issues. And so it was the kind of thing where it was a bummer, but it wasn't sad, if that makes sense. At no point did I cry. I don't feel sad now. It was more like an event that makes you reflect on life and things like that. But then the really cool thing about having to euthanize these two giant goldfish over the past year is that they're not just a regular fish that you flush down the toilet. They're too big, for starters. But they've been around my house with me and my cats for so much longer than a fish usually does. It doesn't feel right to flush them. It doesn't feel right to just throw them away.
Sure.
Right. And when the previous fish had died, it was winter time and the ground was frozen. So I wasn't going to dig a hole. So I decided to have a funeral pyre for the last one. And I did this last night as well for this fish. And I got to tell you, it's a pretty neat way to send your Jedi Viking fish off to Valhalla or the other side.
Then do you gut it, or you just put the whole thing on there?
Yep, whole thing. No, yeah. I mean, it's just the way I do it is, now that I've done it twice, but I knocked it out of the park the first time. I really planned it out thinking, I didn't look up how do you do a funeral pyre and stuff, right? But it's a fish, so I know, well, it's not like a mammal that's going to take a really lot of heat and stuff like that. You could probably vaporize it over a regular bonfire. That's what I did. So I took a cardboard box that was about the size of the fish, and I filled the bottom of it with magazine and newspaper pages, crumpled up, and then I put the fish on top of there, and then I cut up 3-inch pieces of a 2x4. So I had 15 little 2x4 pieces, and I put those on top of the fish, and I'll tell you why in a moment. And so then I then made another cardboard box that I poked a bunch of holes in, that I stuffed with more paper underneath it that would sit underneath it, that would be kind of the fire starter. In our backyard, we've got a fire pit, and so I put the fire starter one in there and kind of put some kindling around it, put the funeral box on top of that with the chunks of 2x4 in there on top of the fish, and then covered that up with bark and then just took like logs and sort of surrounded it so that, you've got a cardboard box filled with consumables. At one point, a side of a box is going to break and it's going to kind of spill over. So you want to have just some logs around it to kind of keep it intact. And then any other kindling on top that you think would help continue the burn. And then set it on fire. And the reason I would do it like that is so as the whole fire itself is collapsing, because it's going to collapse in and around the fish and keep that fish in this sort of like little oven, right? And the little 2x4s, when they catch fire, they basically turn into like embers, right? They don't just catch on fire and burn like paper, right? They smolder. And so they're going to help continue keeping like an even heat inside the area that you're trying to vaporize. And once you're done, like it's ash, like the fish is gone and it's had like a Viking funeral or a Jedi funeral, and it was kind of nice. It's kind of a nice way to like let it go and say goodbye. But I want to like reiterate that at no point during all of that was I feeling sad the way you would feel sad when your cat or your dog or, a loved one, someone like that passes away. This wasn't a fish that I had like a lot of emotional attachment to, but it did make me think of all the places I lived that I had that fish, right? And if I had it for 10 years, a lot of life happened while I had that fish. Like I can remember
like 9 different places.
Yeah, exactly, right? I can remember picking him out at PetSmart. Like that much clarity to it. So, yeah, interesting.
Here are my takeaways from your story of giving your fish this fitting ending.
Also,
Number 1,
they snap, crackle, and pop too a lot.
So now it's 3 things. So number 1, you have figured out how to successfully burn a former living being, right? Like an animal of some type.
So far, yes.
Yep. So number 2, it was really easy for you to not feel emotion, even though you knew that you had an attachment and this was a pet, but like you were like, I wasn't feeling any. I wasn't feeling sad.
Say I didn't feel an emotion. I said I wasn't feeling sad.
So what emotion were you feeling?
Wistful.
Okay.
You know?
And number 3, you smiled and you were excited when you were talking about the snap, crackle, and pop of it. So it sounds like a serial killer.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I mean, all I'd have to do is find a human-sized box and then just a slightly bigger box, and I take all my magazines that I read and crumple it up and make this thing within. And then you put the logs around it so that, like, if the arm falls out, it's no big deal.
Yeah, probably.
Probably. But,
listen, don't come crying to me next time you have a giant goldfish. So far, I feel confident that this works for fish, but not for creatures like fish. Fish bones are cartilage, basically.
Here's the thing: you're like, I'm working my way up to a drifter.
Listen. If Chrissy ever goes missing,
I know.
Pay no attention to the columns of smoke in my backyard.
So here's a couple of things that I want to talk about today, and you just easily stepped right into one of them, which is decision making. Okay, so I've had to make some big decisions in my life, and of course, every day I make a lot of small decisions. And I started thinking about the fact this last week because I was listening to someone tell me the story of how they were making a decision, and it was whether or not to get new tires for their car.
Oh, okay.
And this person laid out all these things. They showed me, they had been jotted down some notes on their phone, like these are the pros and the cons and things like that. And I thought to myself, I never make a pro and a con list. Most of my decisions are based on my gut. Like, what does my gut tell me? But if it is spending over $300, I will think about it until I've thought a hole in the ground.
That's smart.
Right. At one point,
should lower that number.
At one point, I was supposed to get a new car. My car was literally falling apart. And I started looking, and I found something that was like 90% there, but not 100%. And like, and so 7 years go by, and I finally get a new car. 7 years from the initial, it's time for me to get a new vehicle to drive around in. And the whole time I'm looking and I'm thinking, for example, your dad took me to like 4 auto dealerships and
he
like 4 places he knows.
So happy.
He was so invested in that.
That is his favorite fucking thing.
And I could tell he was so frustrated when I was like, yeah, and then he's like, you got to call my guy, call Jason. And I didn't call Jason. He's like, why haven't you called Jason yet?
Because when you go car shopping, he's going car shopping too.
Right.
That's
he
why.
gets the thrill.
When 2023.
I'm taking a trip to New York coming up here pretty quick. And, you know, it's going to be expensive. Right. It's more than just a trip to the cities.
Mm-hmm.
But
Tired boy.
I am a tired boy. Because I haven't gone on a trip since 2019. I haven't been on a plane since 2019 when I went to my sister's wedding in Jamaica. And not for lack of trying, every time I've booked something, the pandemic happens or Jill gets COVID and like we just can't do any of the things I want to do. So I finally decided I'm going to go to New York City. I'm going to drop a lot of coin because I want to see Hugh Jackman on Broadway in The Music Man.
Okay.
That's what I want to do.
There you go.
And I want to go see the Beetlejuice. And also, they've got a new off-Broadway musical starring Sesame Street characters, and it's actual puppeteers. It's not like people in suits and stuff like that. Yeah. And so it's only it only seats like 105 people in this theater because they had to build a special stage, you know, so they could have the puppeteers.
Right.
And afterwards, I get to take a picture with honkers. You know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the honkers? Like I bought the VIP like meet and greet afterwards. And so I'm really excited about this.
Who
trip.
sounds like a serial killer?
Right, me. Because it's funny, when I bought those tickets, they're like, and how young is your little one? And I said, 38. So I went back and forth, though, on like all the decisions. I could not book a hotel room. I could not commit. And part of it was, gosh, I don't want to book a hotel and then find out it's really run down.
Right,
And I don't trust like TripAdvisor reviews because I know that some chains pay for them essentially. You know, they'll be like, "Hey, you can have a free room. Just leave us a 5-star on TripAdvisor and fill out about a paragraph." And I don't trust photographs.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I think I wish the first photograph would be a newspaper with the date on it. To be like, oh, you took this in 2007. That makes sense. And then I didn't want to pick the wrong location.
Right.
Right?
Do you have any rewards with accounts with any particular like chain?
I do. I'm pretty loyal to Hilton properties.
That's what I was going to say. So there's no Hiltons available?
There were, but again, like, so like, for example, one of the ones available was the Plaza, $1,500 a night. Not going to do that. Not going to be in that room long enough.
No.
Then there was like, and I get confused, right? So there's the Hilton Residence and then the Hilton Residence Health Club.
You are such a tired boy
I know.
today.
I need to take a sip of water.
You can't see his face.
It's not like I got a bad night's sleep.
You
It's
can't
just
see his face, but I can. And he is fighting yawns, which is making me fight yawns.
I know.
And I actually am a tired boy today too, because this is my first coffee of the day, and it's
I
actually
slept in today. I should be fine.
dude. Sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
on Friday, I laid down at 4 p.m. to take a quick 20-minute nap and woke up at 9:30.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And then went to the Wintersteins for like a little party and then went back home again and slept for another like 8 hours.
Isn't it weird that like the sun is up when you take your nap and then it's gone when you get up from the nap? And then
Yeah.
you're like, what day is it? What year is it?
It stopped being a nap and became just sleeping. Yeah.
When I make a major decision, one of the things, and like, I hardly ever involve my wife when I make a major decision because I feel like her opinions are only her opinions. Now, again, I love Jill a lot, but
Are you saying
Jill,
only she has them?
No, I think that she thinks about herself, right? So if I said, hey, I want to get this car, she's like, I don't like that color. Well, you shouldn't ask me if I like that color, but she doesn't like it. And so now I have to think about like, God, Jill's gonna have to look at it in the garage every morning. I just don't like talking to her about some of these things because sometimes she's like, I don't care.
She's going to poke holes in the joy that you're feeling
Right.
over it. Yeah.
Yes.
She's going to deflate what's going on.
Usually by the time I involve Jill, I've made my mind up and I just need someone to, you know, hip hip hooray and push me that last step to do it. It is difficult though, I think, to make a decision and feel confident immediately. So many people make a major decision and then within that next day have the regret of it, right?
Right.
So buyer's remorse. We
Right.
all know what buyer's remorse is. Did I buy the wrong car? Or, Are they going to tell me like 2 days later that they're releasing a brand new Apple laptop that's way better than the previous model?
That's a big one for sure.
Right? And so I remember I bought my iPhone, which is an iPhone 12, and 2 weeks later, they're like, the 13 is coming, unlike anything you've ever seen before. So good. And it was like retailing for the exact same price I just bought my 12. So I'm like, I just should have waited a couple more weeks, man. Come on. But when you make a decision, Tucker, how do you, like, if you're like, I'm going to go visit my sister, what's the decision-making process for you at all?
No, it isn't hard for me to like get to a decision at some point, but it's more about how soon in advance do you really need me to make the decision, right? Like there's a lot of things that I have it does not bother me to hold off on making plans. So, for example, if I'm going to go visit Brianna, what are we going to do while I'm there? I'm not going to make any of those decisions or have them made for me. Maybe an idea or two, but I'm just going to kind of go with it. I think how much time I put into a decision is just going to depend, or how much time I think about it is just depending on how big of a decision is it going to be. So like, do I start this new big project? Well, like the decision to start this podcast. I mean, that I'd thought about that for a few months before even talking to you about it. And then we thought about it for a while before even jumping in, because it was a big commitment. And you kind of want to know, is this an idea or a decision I'm coming to in the moment because it's novel and exciting right now? Or is it because it's something I actually truly want to do and should do? And so like, if you can wait, that is the better, if you have the luxury of being able to wait a little bit on a decision, that can help you clarify if it's a really good one.
To me, I think about the word decision is completely interchangeable with the word commitment, right?
Right.
So what have I committed to doing?
Mm-hmm.
I'm planning a birthday party for myself. The day that this podcast launches will be my 39th birthday.
Happy birthday.
And I sent out a message because I said, you know what? I'm going to take matters into my own hands, and I'm going to have a mystery movie screening.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to rent a theater, and I'm going to bring in a special movie. No one's going to know what it is but me. And then I am going to have to fill that theater. And so I start sending out these invitations to people, and there's a picture of me in like a 3D form, and it's like, hey, you're invited to this movie. It's free for you, but you don't know what it is going in. So it's kind of fun, right? Like it's a gamble. If you like pull tabs, you'll like my birthday party. And I've had a couple people tell me, I need to know what the movie is before I come. And I'm like, that's the whole point of this, is that nobody knows.
Yeah.
Not even my wife knows. And
But do you know it already?
Yeah,
You do know it. Okay.
in fact, I was down to 15 choices, right? And I got a text yesterday.
Are you willing to say what it is not?
No, because I want people to be able. This is what I did promise, though. I said this movie has an over 90% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay.
It is a movie that I have found utter joy in. I know other people like it as well. And it's not something you're going to go and be like, oh my God, I got to sit through this. So for
Something
example,
with like Albert Brooks in it?
there's no Albert Brooks in it. So that weighs it down for you a little bit. What did you think it was?
I'm just reading your face.
Oh, were you thinking like maybe it's defending your life? It's
No.
not that, but I love that movie.
What was the one that with him and his mom?
Mother? Great movie. But
Brilliant movie.
Not the feel I want from my birthday party. And so I took those people who are really arguing with me. I said, you can't know. But yesterday I did get a call from one of my friends who has kids and goes, I need to know the runtime. And I went, oh, snap. Okay.
Ooh, shit.
So if I got to figure out the runtime on this one, what is it going to be? And so I finally committed yesterday, and I said, this is it. That's what I want. And you know what? The second I committed to it, I felt great. I'm like, this is a good choice.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was able to look up some trivia pieces so that when I introduced the movie without saying what it is,
JJ, I'm going to need to know the runtime too, actually. What is the runtime?
1 hour and 59 minutes.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
1 hour, 59 minutes. And I'll tell you this, even though you and I are such good friends, I don't think that you'd be able to pick this
I don't
movie.
think that's my guess, is that it's not going to be anything that I would be able to draw on what we've talked about.
I will tell you this much. This is a movie that is a forgotten gem that is so friggin' good. I remember seeing this movie in theaters with Britta and Scotch, and then saying, I gotta go again. And that same weekend, I went to it a second time.
Okay, it's not Top Gun Maverick.
Nope. I already had a private theater for Top Gun Maverick. That was awesome. Here's a decision that I'm having a lot of trouble making right now. Okay. Should I get a new computer?
Yes.
Why?
Well, okay. Let me take a step back. What do you have right now?
So I've got a MacBook Pro
Okay.
that is old.
Okay.
I'm going to say it's 6-7 years old at this
Okay.
point. It still runs everything pretty decently, including like Adobe Audition and Photoshop. But I hear so much about this M1 chip, and people are seemingly loving it. And I was thinking, like, I should get a MacBook Air because I bring my computer to work every day. I bring it in the studio. It goes with me on location. And maybe it's just time to have something. But my computer usage is way down compared to what it used to be.
Sure.
For example, like when I lived in an apartment, I was playing video games on my computer all the time. I never play a game on my computer. I was watching a lot of content. I watch almost all my content on my phone now.
Really?
Like when I like a YouTube trailer or something like that.
Got it.
But I used to use my computer for that solely, right?
Right.
And I used to use my computer was my bedside, I'd watch stuff as I go to bed. But now I've
Right.
got a television in my bedroom,
Right.
and so I just don't see the consistent need. This weekend, I left my computer at work. Didn't even bother to bring it home.
I wonder if it would make more sense for you to get a pad. But I mean,
No, that I will not do.
oh, okay.
I am 100% against that
Okay.
because I already have a phone.
Okay. Got it. Well, then, yeah, I mean, I think you'd actually be getting one with an M2 chip in it now. Probably. I have to look at what's for sale right now. But yeah, the power difference as far as what it can do is pretty incredible. I'm not sure how much you would notice with what you're doing on it, except that you would just be like, yep, this is zippier. This is better. I'm hoping to at some point get a new MacBook Pro. That would just be my do everything machine on, including editing 6K video on it, right? Because they're getting that good now. So I mean, you're definitely going to have an awesome experience. But if yours is one where it's like, there's nothing that my current computer that I have doesn't do for me that I need it to do for me, then I can see you going, maybe I'm not going to.
I remember my mom being like, "Hey, I ordered a new computer today. I ordered a new MacBook Pro," and I'm like, "Why? You play solitaire?"
Right.
Like, I don't get it.
Right.
Let me tell you a story of a series of bad decisions I made, like in one afternoon.
Okay.
So my sister and her husband were kind enough to invite Jill and I, and then Brady's mom and sister, to the Dominican Republic. Yeah, this is 6 years ago now. And we'd go on this trip, and they covered it. They paid for it. They paid for us our flights. They paid for our stay at this all-inclusive resort. It was great.
Wow.
First time I've ever been at an all-inclusive resort, and I loved it. Right on the beach, all these pools. It was just what you see like in all the marketing materials. It's great. So there's a spa on site at this resort. And so one of the free things you get is this aqua experience, where essentially they use water in all these different ways to make your body feel alive. It's 60 minutes. And the first thing you do is you go and you sit in this sauna for like 20 minutes, right? And all the steam is bringing all the stuff out of your pores. Then you go and there's a giant wooden bucket full of ice cold water, and you pull a chain and the ice cold water goes all over your body and your skin feels so alive.
Okay.
Then you get into a pool, and when you get out of a pool, the step or the ladder you use to get out of a pool, it's that, but with no steps on it. It's just 2 bars. You hold onto that, and this extreme jet pushes you, so you're like in a Superman position, but you're holding onto this, and so your body is all in this current. Then you go to another one where all these rollers are rolling all over, like you're making a JJ sandwich, but it's all underwater, and then you go. And you sit in this water that's like salt water, right? So you get the saltwater feel. And so it's this amazing experience. And everyone who goes to the resort can do this once. And then it's an additional $20 if you want to do it like on day 2, 3, whatever. So I do this aqua experience and it's amazing. And then I booked a massage afterwards.
Nice.
And I booked not a typical massage, but what they call a 5-stage massage. So the first thing that they do is they wrap you up like in seaweed for like 20 minutes. And so you have the seaweed on you, and then they're going to put all this mud all over you, and then the mud hardens and you take the mud off. And then they do like this deep tissue massage all over. And then they hit you with palm fronds and stuff. So it's all this stuff that goes into it. And so I get done with my aqua thing, and I wore just a t-shirt and my swim trunks down there because they said that, you just need swim trunks. That's all you need. And I had intended on being nude for my massage because I am comfortable being nude for a massage. That's how way I'd normally do it. So I go in there and they're like, all right, you're locker number 13 in the men's room. And I'm like, thank you very much. So I go to locker number 13 and there's a robe hanging in there. And then there's a little toiletry kit in a little baggie. And so I'm like, afterwards, a lot of spas, like if you go, it's not just the massage, but they've got, like heated pools and all this other stuff. You can do steam rooms. And so I was like, this is probably to take care of myself afterwards. This is great. So I put the robe on and it stops at about my nipples for where it's closing. It's clearly way too small for me.
Sure.
So I do my best to suck in my gut and like make myself as small as possible, but I have to hold, both my hands are holding this robe shut because if I let it go, boing, I'm going to be everywhere. So I go back to the lobby and I meet my masseuse there who gives me a weird look right off the bat because I'm wearing this teeny tiny little robe. And she goes, okay. And so she leads me upstairs. Now the stairs are these like, it looks like a Miss America staircase, so it's winding and it goes up. And I realized by like step 10 of 30 steps going up, you can clearly see my taint, right? Like if you're in the lobby looking up, you can see right up into like my undercarriage.
Yeah. And you have massive balls.
Right, massive, big old huge chunkers. And so Brady's mom walks in and sister, because they're going to do the aqua thing. And they're like, hey, JJ. And I say like, hey, but I can't wave because I'm clutching my robe shut. So I get into the room, and it's the biggest massage room I've ever been in because it's a table. There's a full shower there. There's another table with all the stuff that she's going to need for all of this equipment. Tall ceilings. It was just gorgeous, right? Like skylight, so it was well lit. It was just gorgeous. And she says, okay, get dressed. I got to go grab the palm fronds. And she speaks very limited English, so she's trying to tell me she's going to go get the palm fronds. She's making the look of what she's going to do when she's slapping my back with the palm fronds. I'm like, okay, see. So I take the robe off, I hang it up, and then I get underneath and she tells me like to get in and to be like laying on my back, right? She indicates like she taps my back. She's like back and then on the bed. So she comes back in and I'm underneath the sheet and she immediately removes the sheet completely.
Oh.
And she's taken aback, like she's stunned immediately. And I look at her and I was like, mucho grande, and she's like, and she doesn't like, and immediately I become super self-conscious. And so she's like, and so then she puts the sheet back, but kind of haphazardly, like she just like kind of throws it on me.
Sure.
So then she starts wrapping me up in all of this seaweed. And then she's like, okay, so, now it's in the 20 minutes later, she's like, you need to go and like essentially take this shower. and the seaweed will come off in the shower. So I get in the shower, I do that, and I come out and I ask them like, is there a towel? And like I make the motion of like rubbing my body, like, you know, like, but like vigorously. And she goes, K. And I just was like, I don't know a Spanish word for towel. I don't even know a Spanish word for napkin. And I was like, you know, and I start shaking my hands like I'm wet. And she's like, And so I take the robe and I use the robe as like a towel. And she goes, And she hands me a hand towel. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? So then she does the thing where she rubs the mud all over me, and then the mud dries and I wash the mud off, and then I get the massage, and then I get slapped with the palm fronds, and then I take another shower and I'm done. And at this point, this robe is like sopping wet because I've used it to dry my body off 4 times. So I put this robe on, and now it's like clinging to me, right? Like it's no longer like flowy and gravity doing its job. It's like, nope, I'm going to stick to the inner part of your thigh as high up as I can manage. So I go downstairs and I get into this locker room, and I feel horrible right now because nothing about this was relaxing. It was stressful. She was acting so awkward, and I'm just like, what is going on? And so I open locker 13 again, and I finally take the time to read. There's a little like laminated piece of paper inside there that I didn't bother reading because I'm like, I don't need to know the emergency instructions. So what it says is like, it's like, you know, hello and welcome to, you know, like Namaste Spa. And it says like, please feel free to keep your goods in here. You'll unlock it with your hotel key. It's fully secure. Behind you, there is a like numbered set of hooks, and under number 13, which corresponds with your lock, are 4 robes depending on your size. And so I turn around and look, and I'm like, how did I miss this? It's like 60 robes all hanging behind me. And sure enough, there's 13, and there's a small robe, a medium, a large, and an extra large. So I'm like, oh, I could have taken an extra large robe. And then I thought, so I am reusing a robe a very small man had used earlier that day. Our skin cells and hairs mingling. So I'm like, so not only did I use this little guy's thing, but I opened the toiletry kit, which is like sealed. And inside of it, the first thing you see is a pair of like black Speedo underpants.
Yep. That's what you're supposed to have on.
That's what I was supposed to be wearing. So I'm like, oh my God, I am just mortified. Now, no wonder she wasn't expecting a naked man. She was expecting a 95% naked man. So I feel just like completely dejected, and I go, and they're like, would you like to leave gratuity, you know, for your masseur? And I was like, absolutely, because I just made a total ass out of myself. So I put $50 down. And so this woman looked at me and she was like, 50? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, and then she sighs and like turns away from me in disgust. And I go, what the fuck is happening here? I don't get what's going on. It does not make sense to me. So I go and I am back, like just Jill's in the pool, and Chrissy and Brady and I have rooms right next to each other. And Chrissy shows up, and she has also been at the masseuse. She got the same thing I did, and her hair is all like, you know, everywhere because, you know, they do the scalp thing. And Chrissy's like, I just had the most awkward experience. And I was like, did you go naked? And she's like, yes. And she wasn't expecting me to be naked. And I'm like, so now we're the weird ones in this resort, right? They're like,
at least it's not just you now.
Yeah, Los Gordons es, you know, crazy. So
your Spanish is fantastic,
right? And then I'm telling this story now to like our resort friends, the people we've met there, and they go, "Oh my God, you tipped $50?" And I said, "Yeah," and they're like, "That's a huge tip." And I was like,
she jerked you off.
Well, that's the thing. So they go, and then so the husband goes, you know, prostitution is legal in the Dominican Republic. So they probably think you talked her into some kind of, you know, some naughty business. And that's why they looked at you with disgust, because he goes, you see that wall over there? And it was like the edge of the resort. And he goes, if you walk around that wall, there's a bunch of like essentially pop tents that prostitutes have. And so if you're at this resort and you want to engage a sex worker, all you gotta do is walk around this corner and there's a buffet for you. And so they're like, and usually resort employees, you know, that's the thing. They're completely banned from this. Like, it's inappropriate to work at a resort while also turning tricks at it. And so you may have gotten that person fired. Like whoever was working the front desk may have told the manager may have confronted her, and she's like, no, I only saw him naked, and bada bing, bada boom.
Good job, JJ.
Oh, it was, honest to God, one of the most embarrassing moments I have ever been a part of in my entire life. And there have been a lot of embarrassing moments.
My first massage, I had an embarrassing moment. It wasn't nearly as bad as that. At no point did anyone think I had paid someone for sex work. I was in high school, and I was already obsessed with back rubs because my back is hurt all the time. So when I found out how it felt, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so my girlfriend at the time bought me a massage at the YMCA. And so I went there, and it was I can't remember the dude's name, but he like goes, hey, hello, welcome, young sir. You know, he's the masseuse, and he's like, come on in. And I'd never had a professional massage before. So he goes, just take everything off, and then you can just use that towel right there. And so he like hands me a towel to use and says, tells me to get naked, basically.
Yep.
I go, okay. And so he leaves, and I get naked, and then I take the towel, and the towel just feels a lot smaller to me than I would expect. I'm used to wrapping myself in a towel after the shower, right?
Yep.
Wrapping it around and tying it off.
Yep. Makes sense.
Belt. That's what I'm thinking I'm supposed to do. So I do what I can to wrap essentially what's basically a slightly larger hand towel around my waist. I look like the Starsky and Hutch scene with Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson when they use the towels that are too small. And I think that's what I'm supposed to do. And then I tie it up, and then I'm laying down. I'm like, I don't really feel covered barely at all with this thing. That's weird. And then he came in and was like, oh, no, you just drape it on top of yourself. And that was what I didn't get right. And I felt really stupid because then he had to undo it, basically undress the towel for me and redress it.
And I mean, how would you know, right?
At that time, I had no idea.
You learn as you go along.
Yeah. And I sometimes will be naked, but oftentimes I do keep my underwear on. Either because
do you like bunch it up, like, so you turn it into like Speedo style, or are you a boxer brief guy?
Boxer briefs. Yeah, boxer briefs. So the combination of the two, the hybrid model, is the only way I'll ever go. Because I used to be a briefs guy growing up. Then I got into boxers because I thought, oh, well, this is what adults wear. And then I realized, oh, both of those are shitty options, and you should really go with boxer briefs.
Surprised we haven't come up with a name for boxer briefs other than the two things it is, because it's not like,
it's really the only underwear you should have.
You know, like, we don't do that for a lot of other things when we combine them together, right?
If I'm going into a massage and I feel like I'm going to need a ton of lower body work and glute work, then I'll go Nakers. Otherwise, if I don't think I'm going to need to, then I'll just be like, yeah, you know, it depends on kind of like, if it's just upper body, is it full body, depending on what I need. I've had 2 massages in the past month, and I'm probably going to need to get a third one pretty soon. And usually I space them out like every 4 to 5 months before I get one. But the tension in my head and neck have been so bad that I've actually had to go multiple times, and my upper back multiple times. And both times the massage therapist would say like, you're going to need more because that wasn't enough to get that done. So
do you have like knots and stuff like that you need to get worked out, or what?
It was like the muscles in my scapula area were like just locked in and just didn't want to move.
Isn't that the villain from He-Man?
Scapula?
Yeah. Oh, that's Skeletor.
Oh, mighty scapula.
I had a moment this last week where I did something, and now I'm waiting for the other side of the coin to come true. So we have a treadmill in our basement that we inherited from my mom. I'm guessing this treadmill is 15 years old.
Okay.
It's big, it's bulky, but like you can move it around with some effort. And Jill insists on turning it on and off from the switch that's located in the back where the walking board part is. And she's like, I just don't want, like it to turn on in the middle of the night, or like one of the dogs to like turn it on. And I said,
Why would it turn on in the middle of the night?
Trust me, I know. I
What?
know.
What random
Right? I know.
molecule is going to fly through the air and hit the switch?
And it's like maybe a cat jumps across the like top of it and hits like
but first you would have
incline
to
one.
get a cat, right?
Right. And we had a cat at one point, but Jill likes to use the treadmill during the winter because she walks during the summer, but she wants to be able to walk during the winter.
Does she worry about the microwave at night or any other appliance?
No, we're not going down and turning like the breakers off to the rest of the house. Like, well, the garage door opens in the middle of the night. So
What if a ghost wants to get some steps in?
the on and off button is like a toggle switch, and the toggle switch broke. The plastic, it's just been old and it broke. So you can't actually turn it on. It wasn't engaging the electrical appliance. So I open this thing up and I'm like, okay, so I need this. And I'm like, this is the part I need. So I went on eBay and I found a replacement part for it.
Wow.
And ordered it. It's like the 6th thing I've ever ordered off of eBay. They're like, look at your eBay history. And I was like, yeah, look at that. Look at those 6 things I've purchased. And it came in the mail. And it looks like it's about the size of like when you put a quarter into a video game, right? And it's that same red. You know that red that lit up from the background red?
Oh, yeah.
So
You're describing many switches from my youth.
Many switches. And so I have to disengage these like paddles that connect for it, to engage things like essentially to provide power to the motor. It's the power switch more or less is a disruptor. So the power comes in through the plug-in, and this stops it from going anywhere else. And the second you turn it on, it now is going up to the board, so you can choose your things, and you just go into the power, blah, blah. So
That was a really good explanation. Thank you for that.
there you go, yeah. And but it's important to note that there's not constantly power going to anything in the machine. A lot of things, if the power button is not on, it's still feeding. So a lot of computers take a small amount of electricity at all times to keep things like an internal clock moving, stuff like that.
Right.
But this keeps it completely from being able to like have any electricity, which to me I thought was like, well, this is bold. Was the manufacturer worrying about dogs starting this? So they're like, we need this heavy switch located in an inconvenient spot to make sure that no dogs get a chance to turn this on.
Turns it on. That's so objective.
I lost a dog to a shoddily made piece of workout equipment.
JJ, the dogs are on the treadmill again. It's 3 a.m. I'm trying to sleep.
And you've got everyone at Peloton being like, I hate your fucking dogs. Let them get on my treadmill. Okay, so I take the paddles off, I replace it with the new one, and it works perfectly, right? And Jill has been bothered. So the piece came in on Thursday. Thursday I was really busy, and then on Friday I was busy because what did we do on Friday? Oh, I went out for a birthday dinner. Went down and had some Zorba's pizza for my birthday dinner, which is delightful. I won $100 on pull tabs too, by the way. I never gamble.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and I was like, look at this.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank you very much. So Saturday I judged the North Dakota Barbecue Championships. And so I've got I eat, if you take one bite of every single sample, you're going to get one bite, and you have like a 1 ounce bite of each. You've eaten over 2 pounds of meat. And I'm a 3-bite guy because I want to make sure that I am judging these things correctly. So I ate a ton of meat. I was sweating like it was crazy. So I get home and she's like, when are you going to fix a treadmill? And so before I even sit down, I go downstairs and I'm like, brrr, and I fix the treadmill. I turn it on. Everything's good to go. And I expected her to use it immediately. She did not. In fact, she went upstairs and she took a nap. So then today, I expected her to get up early so that she could go and she can make a cell phone call, whatever she's going to do. But use a treadmill. I get up and I come downstairs and I'm like, have you used a treadmill? And she's like, oh, did you fix it? And I was like, yes, I did. I told you yesterday I fixed it. And she's like, oh, well, I thought that maybe you got halfway to fixing it. And I'm like, not only did I fix it, I moved it back into the spot it's supposed to be. And so get your ass on that treadmill. right meow.
Does she go down, get on, and be like, oh, I don't like the color of the Switch?
This is like, nah, this Switch feels weird. So on Monday, if she doesn't use it, I'm going to take something that she loves and somehow attach it like with zip ties to the treadmill.
Mm-hmm.
So like while she's in the shower, I'll take her hairdryer and I'll attach it to the treadmill and I'll be like, oh, I guess you got to use the treadmill now, don't you? I guess you're locked into this
Is there
situation.
anything you could unplug that she would care about that you'd be like, well, what if a dog uses it?
That's the thing. So Jill's the type of person who she uses a hair straightener all the time, will turn the hair straightener off, but just put it right on the countertop. And so there have been times when like I've put my hand on the countertop and have burned my hand.
It sounds like there's more of a chance at this moment of one of the dogs accidentally using the treadmill than she'll actually intentionally going and getting on there right now.
It's just one of those things where now I will just constantly remind her. Also, when Jill and I first started dating, we were probably into like our second or third year, but I went out to Doolittle's for dinner with her parents and her sister. And she had ordered like Flying Tiger, like
a crying tiger.
Yep. Yeah. And I ordered the biscuits and gravy, like, you know, it's over mashed potatoes and stuff.
Where
like,
did you
it was
go?
Great. Doolittle's.
Oh, I'm sorry. For some reason, I don't know why I thought you went to a Thai restaurant. You went to Doolittle's.
I went to Doolittle's.
How the fuck are you getting biscuits and gravy
That's
at
why
a Thai restaurant?
I think it's Flying Tiger.
Yeah, because
it's Flying Tiger.
Because Thai Orchid had a crying tiger.
Oh yeah,
That's
it's
it.
Flying Tiger, and because it's themed after aviation, so that would make sense. So Jill takes one bite of hers and she's like, oh, I don't like this. And I'm like, mine's really good. I said, would you like to just switch meals? Because I know I'd be fine with the flying, because it's
look at
a
you being
spicy
gallant.
Asian dish, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so we swap meals. I bring this up all the time when people are like, you know, like Jill's complaining about me for something. She's like, well, Jesus, JJ did this or blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but remember that time at Doolittle's when you were like, oh, I don't like my meal. And I'm like, well, here, you can have mine. And then you ate the whole thing. And then and here's the thing. I also got slightly sick from her meal.
Here's why I've never been able to keep a relationship going. Because I would have been like, oh, life's a gamble to that person.
But you would have been saying it with mouthfuls of food. Like, nope,
yep.
it's a gamble.
Yeah.
I got a few lost.
Sucks to be you.
So I did it again last night. She had ordered, we went to Boiler Room in downtown Fargo, and she had ordered this meatloaf dinner, and I'm like, you're not going to like that meatloaf dinner.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
Not. Yeah, it's what they do is they put asparagus on your plate, then put a big thing of mashed potatoes, 2 slices of meatloaf, and all brown gravy.
That sounds
great.
phenomenal.
Sounds great. Onion strings on the top.
Why wouldn't she like it? Well, I guess
because I know that they make their meatloaf a little spicy, a little peppery, right? So I ordered Marge's Hot Dish, which is it's ground bison and then corn and green beans and stuff like that. And then it's a thick layer of like cheese, and they put their cheesy tater tots on the top.
Mm-hmm.
So she takes 2 bites of hers. She's like, I don't like this. And I'm like, let's swap. And then she says, she's like, yours is a lot better than mine. And so I'm like, let's swap. We'll just swap meals. It's no big deal. So we swap meals. And she goes to town on Marge's Hot Dish. And I'm enjoying the meatloaf, but my palate had readied itself for something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what I'm trying to get at here is marriage is all about give and take. I give and someone else takes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You should have said to her, no, you fucking clean your plate. That's what you
We're not leaving here until you finish.
There are kids starving in Africa right now that would love to have this meal. But they don't have it.
We
You
will
do.
get this to go.
Here's
and
the
sit
thing.
in Robert's Alley while you finish
At
it.
some point, you do have to lay down some sort of boundary, because then she knows, well, I can go ahead and roll the dice on whatever, because I know if I don't like it, I'll just eat whatever JJ has and have his meal instead. She needs to take a little bit better care of her own judgment.
I think so too.
Be like, if you want to eat my meal, order the same thing that I'm ordering.
I'm doing a lot of like Jill shade in this podcast, but I do really love my wife, and
but-
she takes excellent care of me. So here's another thing that she does. Actually, her whole family does this. They don't speak up at a restaurant.
Oh yeah, that drives me nuts.
And I'm not talking about complaints. I'm talking about placing an order.
Oh yeah, that drives me nuts.
So
Assertiveness is necessary. You can be polite and assertive.
But I'm not even talking about assertiveness. I'm talking about the sheer volume of your voice. So like at most restaurants, there's a din, right? Like it's loud.
Yeah.
And so we'll go to a restaurant on like a Saturday afternoon and it's loud. And, my mother-in-law will be like, like, I'll have the ham sandwich. And then the server go like, excuse me? And she goes, ham. And finally I was like, she'll have the ham sandwich. And like last night, Jill did the same thing. We're at a trendy downtown space that's known for its like loud bar and stuff like that. And so Jill's placing an order, and the waitress, you could tell, was already checked out, right? We must have been her last table for the night. And so Jill's like, I'll have the meatloaf. And she goes, what was that? And she goes, I'll have the meatloaf. And she goes, what? And I finally like put my finger on the menu and like this. And she goes, the meatloaf. And I said, Jill, watch. And I, like in my mind, I'm like, watch this. And she turns to me and she's like, what'd you like? I'll have Marge's hot dish, please. Thank you very much. And she goes, thank you. You need to speak up.
Yeah, that learned helplessness.
They would be horrible as members of the UN, right? If they're like, all right, are we going to ratify this action to take, to give Russia a bunch of barley?
Has her father won an auction in his entire life?
Right. It's, what's weird is, like, we'll be in the car and it's not like they bring their voice down. It's like they're afraid of being too boisterous. It's like they're afraid that someone else is going to hear their order and be like, hey, quick, let's get all the meatloafs for us.
Yeah.
This isn't a secret.
Or was it like both their parents were raised with like, no, don't order too loud because they may consider that to be disrespectful and rude.
Don't order too loud. That's how the devil gets you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, it was... we had a delightful dinner. In fact, we had dinner with a coworker of Jill's from decades ago. And I thought it was going to be really awkward at first, to be honest. And then we ended up having like a really, really nice time. I told that story of me getting that massage.
Mm-hmm. Now, this was when she was working in video rental, right? That's
right.
How you and Jill met, right? Was through video rental?
Yes, we were Romeo and Juliet. She was working at Hollywood Video in Moorhead, Minnesota, and I was working at Take Two Video in West Fargo, North Dakota.
Yeah.
And her older sister worked at the store that I worked at. And so I remember the first time I met Jill was Jill and her dad were bringing Wendy's to Amy at the store, and Amy's like, JJ, would you like anything? And I was like, yeah, I would, thank you. Could I get chicken nuggets? And they brought me chicken nuggets.
Aww.
Like, thank you so much. Now, what's weird when I think about this is, well, where was Claudia? Because they're always together. And I was like, was she getting her hair done? And Pete and Jill were just together? I'm like, I can't envision a world where Jill and her dad are tooling around in the car willy-nilly. So I should ask about that sometime. Like, was that a thing just before me, or what was the deal?
So as a customer, which of the local rental chains do you miss the most?
Take Two Video.
Take Two?
I do. And I think I miss it not only because I worked there, but because Take Two was my video rental place in South Fargo, right? I went to it when it was in its first location, when it was in its second location, when they built the new store. I remember going there, riding my bike. It was just video rental stores are something amazing because you are taking a gamble that you're going to find something you want to watch, and that thing is also in at that time. Like, they're not out of it. Kids today, I talk about
there's no internet, there's no YouTube.
Right.
That's the only way you're going to see something again that at one point was in the theater or on TV.
Amazon will never say, sorry, this is all checked out.
Right. Exactly. Or I'm waiting for that copy of, Presumed Innocent to come in.
Right.
It's been out for a month. For me, I have to think back to a time when at one point in North Fargo, within one block, you had 3 different options for renting videos. You had Videoland, you had All-Star Video, and you had Hornbachers. Hornbachers also had its own video rental section. And I remember with Hornbachers, it was one where all of the cases were out, but the tapes were behind a counter. And if it had this little tag, this little metal tag on a hook underneath it, if the tag was there, the video was in. And then you take the tag up to the front and get the video. And I would actually get, they had old anime there at the time, just a couple of old ones. But All-Star Video is where you'd go for renting video game systems. Like you could rent, a Super Nintendo, or when an N64 came out, you could rent N64s from there. And then Videoland just had everything. And that was where, Rudy had all of the autographs up on the walls and stuff, you know, and he always had weird animals in there and stuff too you could come see. And he was the guy who had like the encyclopedic knowledge of, what are you, I'm in the mood for something funny tonight, and I like Steve Martin, but I've already seen The Jerk.
You should watch Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid.
Exactly. Or do you like John Candy, right? You should check out Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, or blah, 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 blah. And that era, that moment where I could go to one of those places and then at Hornbacher's pick up a Moose Brothers pizza, that's what I miss.
So to me, one of the glory days of renting videos was getting to know the clerks who work there, because some of those people took their job so seriously. In fact, just last night I was mentioning that, did you ever have like a part-time job that if it could have gone career in some way, you'd still be doing it to this day? And I said I would be working at a Take-Two video. Like if I could make a livable salary off of that, that's what I'd be doing nonstop, because I loved it. And you know what? One of the great things is people would come up and complain and complain and complain. They're like, I'd be like, you got $20 in late fees here. That's ridiculous. Blah, blah, blah. What are the movies? And be like, well, ma'am, it looks like it was like Girls, Barely Legal, blah, blah, blah. I think you should talk to your husband. Mm-hmm. So if she gets up in my grill, I can throw her husband on the bus and be like, well, I guess
It's a powerful position. A very powerful position.
But at the same time, you also had the power to forgive late fees too, right?
Yeah.
So if someone comes up and they've got like a little kid with them, and you can clearly tell, like maybe it's dad's weekend and he's bringing the kids to rent a video game system and some video games, and like there's a $10 late fee on there, you can be like, listen, I'm gonna waive this late fee for you. Don't worry about it. Right. We'll take care of you here.
Right. Yeah. Be the one with the hookup.
Yeah. You get like the couple who comes up and they're like, okay, so here's my Jean-Claude Van Damme movie and here's the Reese Witherspoon rom-com. And they're like, which of these is better? And you're like, am I going to side with the guy and his clear love of Reese Witherspoon movies, or the girl's insane love of action in her Jean-Claude Van Damme movie?
You know what I just realized too? I bet right now at home I have a larger library of VHS tapes than Videoland did when I worked there. I bet I do. I'm almost positive that I do. Just trying to picture it in my head of how many shelves we had going at Videoland at the time. Oh man, I remember that period of time where I just thought, here's what I'll do. I'll somehow raise the money to buy Videoland from Rudy, and then I'll turn it into my business and blah, blah, blah. And boy, am I glad that I was so stupid at the time that I thought that could even happen, because that industry died.
Now, that being said, there's a brand new show coming out called The Last Blockbuster.
Mm-hmm.
And, The Last Blockbuster is in Bend, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy who owned that franchise there's a documentary on Netflix about it, but they've made this like narrative series about it, about how important it is to keep this place going and people making pilgrimages out there. And like I think it would be great to do a pop-up for like 1 week only of this place where you could come and walk the shelves and look at different titles, because no matter how good the algorithm is for Netflix, it's always going to suggest something that is like part of their property, right? Something where they can like get it to be higher on the list. Or, you go to Hulu and Hulu wants you to watch their Spooktober stuff, but it doesn't include everything because they don't own the rights to Nightmare on Elm Street. So you won't see any of those things there. I think that there's something magical about walking those shelves and just seeing some of the cover art and like flipping it around and reading what it is. And there's just a magic to it that if there was a pop-up, I would gladly go. There are virtual video stores now where people have like in VR headset worlds where you can walk around a video store and interact with the stuff there. And I'm like, that is baller awesome. I love that.
A lot of people in like the collecting community will turn, the room that they're storing all of those tapes into one that sort of looks like a video rental shop. And I like that, but don't want to do it for myself. Like it's not necessarily a thing I'd want to like lock in, but if I could visit one, have one that I'm routinely going to, or I mean, Videoland itself is still just sitting there. It's just an empty building sitting on a slab of concrete. Someone actually on the Fargo subreddit recently was asking about it. They're like, I've just always seen this building here. What's the story about it? And I was able to go like, well, it closed down in 2005, and Steve Hansen and myself worked there, and blah 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 blah. And it was pretty fun. But it would be fun to get a bunch of like plastic, cases to put the tapes in and stuff. And it is fun trying to curate sections like, over here is going to be sci-fi fantasy, or this is going to be horror or the macabre, or this is going to be comedy. And that's something that I've been finding a lot too, is that because things sort of fall into different types of genres, you're really curating in a rental shop things that you think people would be in the mood for. So it's not like genre in a literal sense. It's more of, if someone is in a mood for something that's going to make them laugh, right? Then I'm going to put Galaxy Quest over here. Versus if they're in the mood for a spaceship movie, probably not going to give them Galaxy Quest. I'm probably going to give them Star Wars.
I have found that, to me, one of the things is my own personal like proclivities are from the fact that I was able to walk around, and like I remember renting The Road to Wellville because Dana Carvey was on the like case for it, and I was like, Wayne's World, I love Wayne's World. And that has become one of my all-time favorite movies that hardly anyone's ever seen. And I feel like the movie I've chosen for my birthday screening is in that same vein, that people would have grabbed it off the shelf, but because it got released in this world of where it's like streaming, if it doesn't get pushed to the top of your algorithm, you're never going to know about it. So like, that's why it's up to me to tell people about it. Also, there's a great story from the Take-Two era, because Take-Two at one point did do the coffee hook with chips on it, and then you bring it back. And the story goes like this. First of all, someone has to audit that once every like 3 days, because essentially you say like, okay, what's in and what's not. And so you go and you look for things that the chip is missing and be like, okay, Popeye, the NES video game, is checked out. There's no chip there. Checks out. Yep. But then you go and you're like, oh God, this one, there's no chip, but it's in. So clearly somebody took the chip, they misplaced it. Sometimes I think people like accidentally put it in a pocket and left and just whatever. And so it was a flawed system, because not only did you have to do this audit over and over again, but you essentially needed almost the same amount of shelf space in the back as you did in the front to be able to have all of these like VHSs and video games. And so I remember one of the older managers telling me, he's like, yeah, one day someone said, well, why don't we just put the tape behind the cover? Because they was like,
they were trying to stop theft. Is that the idea was they were stopping theft by not having it out there?
I think they didn't trust people, but then they realized like, stealing a VHS cassette is more difficult than you'd imagine.
Right.
And then all they did is they put up like boop, 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 boop scanner things, and then you could put like a little RFD tag on the back of everything. So they talked about, okay, should the VHS case go into a sleeve and then the VHS is in that sleeve? And they're like, no, because then you've taken it away from the shelf. You need to put the VHS cassette in its own clamshell and then leave the case there, like, the actual like cover art there, so you can put it behind. And I said, you guys are geniuses. Like, I know that necessity is the mother of invention, but man, you really figured out something special there. Good for you.
Okay, so like when at Take-Two, new movie comes out, you buy 20 copies of it. So you got 20 copies of it, and then at some point you got to downsize because you no longer need 20 copies of Total Recall. So what would you guys do at that point? Just sell them at a discounted price, or what would you do?
Sometimes we'd sell it. Marty Risky, who owned Take-Two Video, came up with the great idea of teaming up with a ton of gas stations across the region, and so they called it Take Two Video Express.
Oh, okay.
And so they would use those to populate other places. They had a huge resale business. Like they essentially ran their own catalog resale.
Okay.
But a lot of times what you do is like, so let's say day one for Transformers, you have 40 copies of the DVD. Right. So you have 40, you'd have an entire shelf that's all Transformers. And so people can come and take it and go. And then 3 weeks go by and like you're renting 75% of them out every weekend. You probably go from having like 4 shelves full to 2 shelves full.
Got it.
And then you got only 1 shelf, but now you're putting like 3 copies behind every cover art piece.
Got it.
And then you start selling them and moving them like that. And then, because we'd have deals where it was like, hey, you can buy 3 DVDs for $25.
Right.
And at that time, it was a great deal.
Right.
And all you just had to do is wait a little bit. And it was, I love that job. But then it's weird because a Barbie movie would come out and you'd have 3 copies and you'd never get rid of any of the copies because on a random Friday night, you might have people like 3 little kids come in and all want to rent out this Barbie movie, even though it's been out for 2 years.
One of the things I like looking for when I'm looking on the shelves at thrift shops is there are versions of a lot of these VHS tapes that were specific, that came out when it used to be that the rental shops had a few month period of a window
Before it was available to consumers.
before it was available to consumers. So I have a copy of, I think, The Cotton Club with Richard Gere, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. And on the cover, it has a retail price of like $75 because it was, and it says, not for home sale, but for rental sale. And I was just like, damn, that's a lot of money. But that was when it was like, if you want it 3 or 6 months ahead of time, that was the only place you could get it. You could rent it at a
It was
at a
out of
restaurant.
theaters, but it wasn't available. And I'm really shocked that the movie industry got away with that because when it became like day one available to the consumer, day one available to rental stores, that was the end of the rental store to some extent. Because,
sure.
People now were like, oh, I can buy this for $20 or I can rent it for $4. Like, I might as well just buy it. I know I'll rent it a couple times. And there's no urgency. Like, for example, Austin Powers was one of those examples. Austin Powers leaves theaters and it's a huge success. And it had like a 6-month, you could rent it before you could buy it.
Really? Wow.
And that was a huge, huge deal. And so they made a ton of money off of that. But I'm nostalgic for movie rental places.
Those days are gone. They are long gone.
They're long gone.
And it's not like vinyl, where a vinyl record actually gives you to this day still gives you an incredible listening experience that you can compare to CD or MP3 or anything else and go, yep, some would say it's even better, depending on the setup and what you're listening to. But older vintage video has an appreciable quality difference, very stark, to a 4K Blu-ray that you get today, right? And so there's the nostalgia for those of us who grew up with it, the novelty of these old things, but it's not going to have the same kind of comeback that vinyl had because vinyl is still a perfectly viable technology today, right? And they're printing new vinyl right now because there's a collector's market for it. But the collector's market of VHS will never be robust enough for them to be like, well, now we got to start making VHS copies of
There
XYZ.
is a weird thing going on right now where a lot of DVDs, like there's a company that knows people are nostalgia for VHS and they're making DVDs that look like it's a VHS cassette. Like the cover art looks like a VHS cassette is coming out of it. And so I think that they know that there are people like you and I out there who do have that affinity for like that delicious, delicious cassette tape. Be kind, please rewind.
There's something about the packaging though too that this is weird, but when I'm holding, let's say I go to Best Buy and I buy a Blu-ray off the shelf, right? I really just want the disc that's inside because the packaging that it's in is really ugly to me. And it actually kind of makes my stomach hurt for some reason. But when I go to like a VHS slipcover where it's just like a little piece of cardboard that's wrapped around this tape, it feels right to me. And there's something about the fact that the tape itself is like 90% of the object, and that the packaging is not even 10%. It's like 1% of the object, right? Versus the reverse in a disc where you're paying for all this empty space and cheap plastic that you could just throw away after the fact. And there's the design on top of it now has been so market tested and changed and modified over time to be something that most people will just recognize on the shelf to grab and buy, versus something that you would want to keep on your shelf that you would actually find attractive in some way. So I really like VHS too for the ability to like remind me of a movie. Oh, that's right, it's on my shelf. It makes me think of it, and then I go watch the Blu-ray of it. Versus like pull out the VHS, unless it's like say my Ernest short films was like 101 of his commercials and it's only on VHS. Now you want to recreate that system, or if it's the Pizza Hut Creator's Choice X-Men tapes, which I collect multiple copies of, you only want to watch that on a VCR.
There is something very similar to a vinyl, like the casing to a vinyl where it's big and you get to take in the art that it was.
Yeah.
And the lettering on the back is big. And then it goes to cassette, which is almost like unreadable. And then a CD, which is on the same side of like, it's hard to read. You can't, you can't take it in. You think of like an album by like Boston, right? Boston had some great album covers. They just don't feel the same way on cassette or on CD, or now this little tiny JPEG that accompanies it when you buy it on Apple Music. And so, yeah, I think a lot of effort goes into cover art, and VHS era was a great era for it.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
All right, let's end this thing with me telling you, take time to search the Great Muppet Caper soundtrack, The Apartment. It is a great little piece of music. And a side note, Joe Raposo, who wrote almost all the music you loved from Sesame Street, right? Amazing composer. Type of guy who like, Joe, we need a song. We need a theme song for this guy. His name's Captain Vegetable. 20 minutes later, he comes back and he's like, what do you think of this? And it's perfect. He did the whole score to The Great Muppet Caper, and I recently saw it on the big screen again, and I have a new appreciation for the score for that movie. It is out of this world.
I need to rewatch that movie, actually. That might be my favorite Muppet movie.
Yeah, the John Cleese scene where he and his wife are talking, and it's just
pig.
great. A pig climbing up the side of the house. Neville, did you say pig? Yes, I believe I did. And then when they talk about, like, she's like, am I boring you, Neville? And he goes, oh, me too. I'm having the time of my life, darling. He's like, if I was bored, I'd probably buy something. And then they talk, like, what would you buy if you were bored? Quail's egg? Jar of Carlsford jelly? Oh, I'd like to help you pick one out. Oh, no need for you to leave the house, Dorcas. It's like, well, I haven't left the house in 15 years.
That whole sequence has got such a John Cleese-ness to it.
It does.
That it makes me want to wonder, like, what was the original written scene? How much was he able to vamp, or how much? Because the line of Quail's egg, no one fucking writes that line. Someone comes up with that, I swear to God.
And I will say this. I think that John Cleese steals that scene, but he's only so good because the woman he's playing against plays it 100% honestly. Mm-hmm. And like, I really appreciated her performance this time too. There's a point where, so the premise of the scene is that Miss Piggy has given this fake address, 17 Highbrow Street, and she's pretending to be this famous fashionista. And Kermit comes to pick her up, so she has to break into the house that she's given the address, and it's owned by this aristocratic British couple who have the most dull, boring conversation while they eat a candle at dinner. And at one point,
Kermit said the pets were dead.
Kermit knocks on the door, and Miss Piggy answers it, and they both kind of look over their meals at what's going on. And John Cleese comes upstairs because Piggy's giving a tour of the house, like a rush tour. And finally, when he opens the closet door that they're in, he's got like a fireplace poker, and he quickly puts it on his back. He goes, oh, hello. I hope you don't think I'm rude, but is there something I can do for you? And she, like, Piggy looks at him and goes, yes. you can recommend a restaurant for us. He goes, the Dubai Club is very nice. He goes, although that's less of a restaurant and more of a supper club. And she goes, the Dubai Club, that'll be great. They run off. His wife joins the scene again. And she goes, what on earth was that, Neville? And he goes, that pig was climbing the side of the house. She goes, yeah, like asking for a dinner recommendation. She goes, well, what did you say? He goes, I said the Dubai Club. She goes, oh, that's more of a supper club than a restaurant. And he goes, yes, I told them. And just like, it is perfect British comedy.
Yeah.
It is perfect British comedy.
And now Charles Grodin's the villain, right?
Yes, and he's my second favorite human in a Muppet movie because
Is the first Michael Caine?
it is Michael Caine.
Okay, yeah.
Because he takes it so seriously.
Yes,
He's not
yep.
acting with Muppets. He's approaching them as if they're and the lust that Charles Grodin has for Miss Piggy.
Yes.
Like you should just see the way he looks at her and like the way he holds the foam of her head. Like it's out of this world. But I'm telling you, the score to this movie is amazing. And so what Joe Raposo does is he brings a reprise in of the song Steppin' Out with a Star. And like it's kind of got this like jazzy like feel, and it lets you know that like this is a moment of like tension that's going on, and it's just so well done. Good for you. And unfortunately we've lost Joe Raposo at this point, but one of those people who it's a name you've never heard of who made a deep impact in the lives of millions, if not billions of people out there. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. I did not choose Captain Ron.